November 2010, 2 years since the bank guarantee. The markets have lost confidence in Ireland's banks and in Ireland's ability to pay its national debt.
All of the euro area leaders are agreed.
We cannot let the bank go down.
You said we had the finances under control.
The projections for the deficit have got worse.
Temporary loans from the European Central Bank are all that is keeping the Irish banks open.
We could be looking at more than 50 billion.
This country is not defaulting, and we're not being bailed out.
Other countries are watching anxiously.
Ireland is causing contagion in the eurozone. It's a threat to the stability of the euro.
They want Ireland to take a massive loan, a bailout.
The markets do not
Believe you can survive without help.
This is a game of bluff, Brian. If we ask for help, that's it. We've lost our leverage.
First Greece, next Ireland? That's the question being asked by markets this morning as pressure rises on Ireland to enter a bailout.
Dublin continues to insist it will not need a bailout, despite growing pressure from markets and other EU capitals. We spoke today to the Minister for Enterprise, Pat O'Keefe.
I'm absolutely unaware of any moves from Europe. It was a hard-won sovereignty for this country, and this government is not going to hand that sovereignty over to anybody else.
Meanwhile, the governor of the central bank has led a team to Brussels for exploratory talks. But not about a bailout, just about a contingency fund.
I am afraid there is no precedent for a so-called contingency fund. We look forward to continued conversation on the details of a program of assistance. Shall we break for 15 minutes?
So?
It's not going well.
Damn it.
They're giving nothing on the contingency idea.
I'll have to take this. Dermot.
Right.
Myself and Noel are at a launch. There's press here. Now, what the fuck are all these rumours about a bailout?
Just refer any questions to the Minister for Finance.
But they'll need more than that. They'll put me on the spot.
Did you get the brief?
Oh, yes, I got the brief, but it was pretty thin.
Just don't deviate from the line.
What about the negotiations?
There are no negotiations.
Minister, is the government in negotiations with the IMF and the EU for a bailout?
Well, I'm not aware of it, nor is Noel.
Reuters, Bloomberg, the BBC, they're all reporting that the Irish government is in negotiations on a bailout with the EU and the IMF. And the Irish government ministers, they're all denying it. What are we to make of it?
Yes, it's absolutely bizarre. Whatever is actually happening behind the scenes, Brian Lenihan will be at a meeting of Euro finance ministers tonight, and that might well bring things to a head.
I was hoping we would get an update on the progress of the negotiations with Ireland, but it appears Ireland is not yet here.
Have they concluded the negotiations?
Well, actually, they have not officially started the negotiations.
So what are they doing in these meetings?
I think they're calling it pre-negotiations.
What are pre-negotiations?
It's a new stage. The Irish invented it.
Sorry, fog. Stuck on the runway.
Perhaps you need a new government jet.
They still have their government jet. We'll need to look at that.
That's hardly fair.
I think we have greater things to worry about.
Absolutely. Okay, our objective this evening is to confirm the Irish entry into a joint EU-IMF assistance program.
I'm afraid I can't confirm anything.
Your hesitation, Mr. Lenihan, is jeopardizing your EU partners on the periphery of the Eurozone. It's a threat to the stability of the Euro.
The contagion could spread to Portugal, to Spain.
We cannot afford to bail out Spain.
Germany has already bailed out Ireland once with the DEFA Bank.
That's not quite accurate.
What did the New York Times call it? The Wild West of European finance.
I think you'll find it's not at all like that.
So it should be clear that we need to lock this down.
We won't be locking anything down, least of all a bailout.
The most important thing is the austerity.
We have led the way on austerity at considerable political cost to our government.
I think we are all agreed that you need to cut quicker.
And deeper. You need a more aggressive deficit reduction program.
Exactly, you are not cutting enough.
You should cut €8 billion in the next year, not 6.
That would destroy our economy. There's no point in cuts for the sake of cuts.
You must have fiscal appetite.
Yes.
You need to move forward your budget.
That was a disaster the last time. I won't be trying that again.
We may also need collateral for the loan.
What kind of collateral?
Well, your electricity supply board, for instance.
You want us to hand over our electricity supply board?
Only if you do not make good on your loans.
There may be an alternative concession. There is a sense among many Germans that a bailout from your European partners is not compatible with Ireland keeping its corporation tax rate at the lowest in the EU.
Yes, a Europe that shows solidarity through bailouts should also show solidarity through harmonized taxation.
Changes to our taxation regime are a matter of national sovereignty. The EU has no mandate to seek to change them.
I'm not talking about a mandate. I'm talking about negotiations through which partners may seek
We are fully funded until
compromises
next
from
summer.
each
We don't
other.
need to enter a
We
program.
cannot afford to wait and see until next summer.
not.
The risk to the Eurozone is too great.
The functioning of the currency union is
You
a
need
stake.
to announce that you wish to start negotiations on a program.
But I have to report to the Irish government.
I don't think you understand the urgency of the situation.
There's a great danger of contagion.
You have to do this tonight.
I do not have plenipotentiary
You need to call
powers.
a press conference.
I have to consult with the Irish government.
We need to conclude the negotiations.
We haven't even started negotiations.
Well, that's the problem, actually.
But the discussions can continue in Dublin.
When exactly?
On Thursday. Yes, Thursday.
What do they want?
Collateral for any loans. 8 billion of austerity, not 6. Our corporation tax.
You didn't concede anything.
Just to continue the talks in Dublin.
Talks, not negotiations.
Discussions. The teams will be arriving tomorrow.
Okay.
What we are involved in here is working with colleagues in respect of currency problems and euro issue problems that are affecting Ireland and other countries. There has been no question of the government being in a negotiation for a bailout. Very simply, we are working with colleagues in respect of issues that are arising and affecting Ireland.
So they can bail us out.
We've had enough of your
I'm afraid not, Governor. Is it urgent?
Listen to this. Ireland has little time to lose. Overall deposits are shrinking. Europe must prepare for a run on the Irish banks spreading.
Oh, Jesus. What's that from?
It's tomorrow's FT. It's just gone online. We're going to need more emergency liquidity.
I'll get the Minister.
No. No, not yet.
I'll talk to Trichet.
Oui, Patrick.
Jean-Claude.
There's a run-on. I need more liquidity support for the Irish banks.
Patrick, we cannot authorize more liquidity until the Irish government agrees to start negotiations on a program.
What is it?
Trichet wants you to make a formal request to start negotiations on a program.
Why are they trying to rush me?
What are you waiting for?
It's too soon to show our hand. We'd lose all leverage.
This isn't poker, Brian.
Patrick, it's always poker.
There is a run-on. Not just corporate money. It's spreading to the high street. The public need reassurance.
You need to announce you're requesting a program.
Look, that would have to be a government decision.
Well, then you're going to have to call a cabinet meeting.
I'm not the Taoiseach, Patrick. That's the Taoiseach's prerogative.
Oui, Patrick.
They're not ready.
Jean-Claude.
Patrick, I have given enormous sums of liquidity to Ireland.
A fifth
of our entire stock of reserves.
This is not a sustainable process.
I cannot continue to put the money of Europe's citizens at risk.
They need to go through the political process in Dublin.
That will take days, a week.
By then it might be too late. Look, I need to stop this run now. I need to reassure the public the money is safe.
That's what the announcement of a program will provide. Reassurance.
If I go on radio and say that the European Central Bank will stand behind Irish depositors...
I cannot confirm something that is not confirmed.
But can I reassure the Irish public without fear of being
contradicted?
We will stand behind the Irish depositors when Ireland is in the program.
But will you contradict me?
Yes. Yes, I will, Patrick.
If you go too far, I will contradict you.
Be careful. Be very careful.
Oui, merci.
Good evening, gentlemen. Checking in?
Yes, Ashok Modi.
The company name, sir?
IMF.
Sorry, how do you spell that?
IMF.
Ah, yes, here it is. How long will you be staying, gentlemen?
And welcome back to Morning Ireland. We're joined now from Frankfurt by the Governor of the Central Bank, Patrick Honohan. Thank you very much for ringing into the programme, Governor.
Good morning, Rachel.
Governor, the troika of the IMF, the ECB and the European Commission have arrived in Dublin.
Minister Honohan's on the radio.
Why didn't you tell me he was going on?
We didn't know.
There's a palpable sense amongst people that they're not being given the full picture, that they're being treated with contempt. So what are the IMF and the ECB here for today?
Hold the line, Patrick.
Well, I think the purpose of the whole thing is to provide reassurance.
Are we talking about a bailout?
We don't talk about bailouts. The IMF talk about loans, not bailouts. Loans get repaid.
Hold the line.
So you can confirm that they will be giving us a loan?
Well, if it's agreed. Of course, yes, if it's agreed.
When you say, if it's agreed, I mean, why else would they be here?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's my expectation that these negotiations...
discussions will be effective and that a loan will be made available.
How big is this loan likely to be?
Oh, it'll be a large loan. Because the purpose of it is to show that Ireland has sufficient firepower to deal with any concerns of the market. So, we're talking about
a very substantial loan, to be sure.
Are we talking tens of billions, 60, 70 billion maybe?
Tens of billions,
yes.
So it is your understanding that we will be receiving a multi-billion euro loan from the IMF and from the EU?
That's
not my call. It's the government's decision at the end.
It's my expectation
that this is definitely likely to happen.
Jesus, Patrick! Hell is at the gates.
The Governor of the Central Bank, Patrick Honohan, confirmed today that the government is in negotiations with the EU and the IMF on a bailout. Well, joining me to discuss this now is the business journalist Tom Lyons. Tom, what are the implications of all this?
Well, there's never been an intervention like this by a governor of the central bank. He's made the government look like fools. And the real question is the government ministers who came out on this issue, were they lying or were they simply in the dark?
I welcome this morning's comments by the Governor of the Central Bank. Were these technical discussions to result in the availability of a substantial contingency capital fund to back Ireland, that would be desirable.
If it is poker that the minister is playing, it is liar's poker. The minister has no cards left. His colleagues over the weekend, with their incredible denials, have embarrassed the nation. This government is an embarrassment to the people. They will not talk plainly. They will not share the nation's grief with the people or tell them what lies ahead.
Mais bon Dieu, c'est pas vrai! Why is Lenihan still talking about a contingency fund? This has to end. Take a letter. Dear Monsieur Lenihan, only if we receive, in writing, a commitment from the Irish government that it shall send a request for a financial support program to the Eurogroup, can we authorize further provisions of emergency liquidity to the Irish institutions. Fuck. I'm sure that you are aware that a swift response is needed. Before the markets open on Monday.
We need another week.
We don't have another week.
But the corporation tax rate, it's still on the table.
Good morning. The French and German governments have retreated from earlier statements that the Irish corporation tax rate is under threat.
They've taken the corporation tax rate off the table.
What's that? The corporation tax rate.
They've taken it off the table.
So we'll start negotiations then? Just terms and conditions now. Are your officials ready?
Feels like we're dealing with the invader. I hardly feel like the minister anymore.
I'll call a cabinet meeting for tomorrow.
I'll talk to Trichet. Where are you anyway?
Aaron Moore, the by-election, doing a doorstep now.
Taoiseach, do you think the best place for you to be while the IMF are in Dublin is canvassing on an island off Donegal?
There are dire issues here regarding salmon fishing. It's my job to meet the people and have a good discussion with them about this. Well, catch again in my old Bredine.
On Sunday, the Cabinet signs off on the official start of negotiations. And on Monday, our team sits down again with the Troika. The signs are ominous. They want us to take a bigger bailout than we anticipated, which will cost more in the long run and do more damage in the short run. For now, though, we just have to grit our teeth and get through these negotiations as best we can.
I want to make the position clear. We were trying to ensure that we were not bounced into a situation. There are occasions when the imperative of serving the national interest transcends other concerns, including party political and personal concerns. This is one such occasion.
Oh. Send him in.
Who is it?
The IMF. Modi.
Minister, Mr. Modi.
The program will not work. They want you to take 85 billion. You can't afford it. It would add too much to your debt burden. You would never regain market confidence.
But what choice do we have?
The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. The cost of the bank losses is so high because you have taken the entire burden upon yourselves. You need to share it.
With who?
With those who should have suffered the losses. The people who lend recklessly to the banks. The bondholders. You need to burn them.
But we've said we'll pay our debts as a state.
But you're not capable of paying your debts. You can only pay them if you reduce them.
But we've been told all along that that would cause contagion, that it could reignite the European debt crisis.
It could. There could be havoc. But it would not be your havoc. Because of this bailout that we are currently negotiating, Ireland would be out of the market for 3 years. So contagion would be somebody else's problem.
How much could we save?
It appears that there may be 36 billion of bonds in play. Now, you can't save all of that. Perhaps 50 to 60%.
20 billion?
Yes.
This could be our salvation.
There was a fresh crisis in the government today as the Green Party called for a general election to be held in the new year, despite the fact that negotiations on a bailout are ongoing.
Mr. Modi.
We have spoken to IMF headquarters.
Strauss-Kahn is in favor of forcing losses on the bondholders.
What about Trichet?
Strauss-Kahn will do whatever he
can to push it through.
Sources close to the negotiations on the EU side said it was vital that the Irish government conclude negotiations and pass the budget in order to avoid contagion risk across the euro area.
I hope you have good news for us, Mr. Modi.
Strauss-Kahn is going to organize a conference call with G7. the top contributors to the IMF.
Trichet won't like it.
No, Geithner. He thinks he can persuade them. He's going to ring me later with the news.
Portugali on ilmoittanut uudesta tiukasta talouden säästöohjelmastaan, jolla pyritään kontrolloimaan sen lisääntyvää talousvajetta.
Strauss-Kahn has been talking to Geithner. He thinks he can bring him around.
With negotiations with the EU, IMF, Troika in Dublin expected to run for at least another week, it's been reported that the ECB is pressuring Portugal to follow Ireland into a bailout.
Right, so when will we know?
The conference call is later today.
Who will be on it?
The G7 finance ministers, Strauss-Kahn, Geithner and Trichet.
We've no one on it.
It's the IMF's main contributors only.
What are your latest calculations?
8 to 12 billion.
The IMF said we could save 20.
There is a degree of complexity that hasn't been fully factored in. Secured debt, subordinated, legal issues.
Is it worth the risk?
It would be unlikely to have a significant effect on our debt sustainability. It's not a miracle cure.
It's the narrative. Burden sharing. Sharing the burden, not just foisting it on the citizens. We'll finally get to punish the reckless lending. And the IMF are pushing it. Strauss-Kahn is behind it. Geithner. They'll bring Trichet around. But we need this. The country needs it.
The fallout from the four-year plan announced yesterday continues, and joining me to discuss it is business journalist Tom Lyons. Tom, it's been described as harsh medicine.
This is a ginormous gamble by the government. On the one hand, we think that by cutting costs, we're hoping this will restore market confidence. But at the same time, what it means for the consumer is there's a lot less money in the economy, and that's going to push down growth, and it could push us further into some sort of a recession.
France?
Oui.
Germany?
Yeah.
The United States?
Ready and waiting.
And the European Central Bank.
Bien sûr que je suis là.
There is a proposal to force losses on holders of senior debt in some of Ireland's banks.
Investors should bear responsibility for their losses.
Mais non, the ECB is not in agreement.
Our team in Dublin feels the program currently being negotiated is not sustainable. It should be relatively straightforward to force losses on some of these bondholders.
But nothing is straightforward in this crisis.
We need to lie down the market.
This is overdue.
What we need is credibility.
Market credibility comes from having a sustainable debt burden.
Credibility
comes from paying your debts.
What is the saving to Ireland?
They think it could be 8 to 12 billion.
8 to 12? We spent 700 on our rescue plan. You put together a $1 trillion rescue fund for Europe.
You spent 110 billion euro bailing out Greece.
And you're going to risk global contagion for a saving to Ireland of 8 to 12 billion?
The risk of global contagion is overstated. That moment has receded.
Money is running from Europe as we speak.
But the public cannot keep paying these private debts.
It is insupportable.
You know,
you sound a bit like Herbert Hoover.
In the 1930s.
What has Herbert Hoover got to do with this?
He let the banks collapse.
Their bondholders were burned. He didn't bail them out. And what happened? Everybody panicked. There was global contagion.
The Great Depression. It lasted a decade.
You know what banks used to do to stop runs? They used to stack money in their windows so their customers would see they had it. And plenty of it.
So their customers wouldn't panic and take their money out. Well, sovereign debt crises are the same. Money is running from Europe as we speak.
But the moral hazard.
The moral hazard will pale beside the cost of a panic on Europe's debt markets. Ireland can't be threatening to take money off market lenders.
They need to take the bailout money. All of it. And stack it in the fucking window.
You need to close this down. There's too much uncertainty.
Negotiations in Dublin are due to run another week.
Another week? Of speculation, of these erratic Irish pronouncements.
This is a clusterfuck. Close it off.
Thank you for your advice, Secretary Geithner. And to the rest of our colleagues also.
Merci.
The IMF will give it close consideration.
You said that we could burn 36 billion.
It was a starting estimate. But it doesn't matter. We can't save anything now.
The Strauss-Kahn was going to be brought round. Geithner too.
It's the Geithner doctrine. You don't force lenders to take losses in the crisis. We thought the circumstances here were different, that the Irish case could be an exception. But it turns out there are no exceptions to the Geithner doctrine. Trichet was implacable anyway. We got it wrong.
The Cabinet is meeting tonight to review the terms of the proposed EU-IMF bailout package. It's not yet known whether the package will include measures to force bondholders to take losses on their investments in Irish banks.
There must be an alternative.
There's no alternative.
There's always some alternative.
The country can't pay its way. We have to borrow to keep schools and hospitals open, but market lenders have abandoned us. We have to borrow from somewhere. This is our only option.
What if we cut the deficit?
We are cutting the deficit as fast as we can.
In 1 year. So we wouldn't need to borrow.
That would mean cutting 20 billion in 1 year. Can you imagine what that would do?
Well, it might be the price of salvaging our independence.
That would be the equivalent of closing every school and hospital in the country.
It would destroy the country.
We're not too many steps away from a serious breakdown of social cohesion as it is.
This deal could destroy the party.
Yes, that might be the price of it.
What if we burden the bondholders?
Yeah, I thought you were getting something
We've
on that.
exhausted that possibility.
What would that save? Well, it would restore some credibility.
People get lost on what-if scenarios. Let's not add to the uncertainty. We have to try and keep things simple. We need to fund the state and fix the banks. Let's keep it simple.
You call this a bailout? It's us bailing out German and French banks.
Even the German press are saying it's too oppressive.
It's humiliating. It feels more like a surrender. Dear God, the shame of...
This is the outcome of a difficult negotiation conducted in good faith by our top officials in this area.
In good faith?
Yes.
You lied to us.
Nobody lied to you. There were no negotiations at the time when we spoke.
There was a delegation of Irish officials in Brussels for negotiations.
For discussions, that's all it was.
Discussions have started at Cabinet.
We were deliberately kept in the dark. You hung us out to dry.
Look, I told you to be careful. Things were changing very fast.
What, too fast to keep the Cabinet informed? You went on a solo run.
I kept the Taoiseach fully informed.
But not us.
Just like with the guarantee.
Oh, the blanket guarantee.
We are where we are. We are where we are. I know there are all sorts of problems, but this is where we have to go. There are no options here. Are we agreed?
Brian?
It's over, John.
Where are you?
Baldonnell, en route to Brussels to sign the agreement. We can't run our own affairs, John. No other Irish finance minister's ever had to admit that.
If we go into an election after this, with Cowen as leader, we'll be wiped out.
Look, I can't move against the Taoiseach now.
You won't have to move.
He who wields the knife never wears the crown. I'll wield the knife.
I'm dying, John. I won't have long.
You might have long enough.
Like El Cid.
El what?
Charlton Heston,
What are you talking about?
Film, have you not seen it? Charlton Heston plays El Cid, a knight in medieval Spain. He's a great warrior. He gets killed by an arrow, but his men secure his body upright on his horse and send him back into battle.
Minister, the plane is ready.
Looks like it's time to saddle up.
Good morning. The government has confirmed that the country is to enter an €85 billion assistance programme, more commonly known as a bailout, jointly administered by the IMF and the EU. The agreement is being signed in Brussels today by the Minister for Finance.
Il governo irlandese ha finalmente accettato i termini di un piano di bailout da parte della UE e della FMI.
Edessä ja sen odotetaan allekirjoittavan 85 miljardin euron niin sanotun bailout-tukipaketin tulevana viikonloppuna.
Com a expectativa de Dublin concordar com o pacote de bailout este fim de semana, levanta-se uma questão. Será que isso vai ser o suficiente para interromper o contágio na zona do euro?
This deal is a downright obscenity. By refusing to force losses on the holders of Irish bank debt, those losses have been transferred to the Irish people, in many respects, to the poorest of the Irish people.
Since when were Fine Gael ever concerned about the poor?
The deal needs to be renegotiated. In the election, we will look for a mandate to do so.
Bring on the election.
But that a Fianna Fáil-led government should be the one to surrender our national sovereignty has its own irony. The minister should be ashamed and his colleagues should share the shame.
Things seem to settle down again, somewhat, over Christmas. We have to pass a finance bill to set the bailout agreement in stone, but the Greens have promised to stay in government to make sure the bill goes through. That puts the threat of a general election off, for a couple of months at least.
Where are we at with the finance bill?
Final draft is with the AG's office.
There's been some blowback from backbenchers on the universal social charge.
Tell them it's a tidying up exercise.
Well, it's not just a tidying up
all
exercise.
The existing levies, just do it.
The Commission are looking for a schedule for the first 10 billion recapitalisation.
Tell them to get back to them later in the week.
Get back to them? But they've moved into my fucking office.
Good evening. The government is in crisis this evening after it was revealed that the Taoiseach Brian Cowen had played golf with the chairman of Anglo-Irish Bank, Sean Fitzpatrick, just months before the bank guarantee in 2008. Brian Cowen denied today that he discussed Anglo-Irish Bank matters with the Anglo chairman.
I do not play much golf, and I have not played golf with Mr. Fitzpatrick before then or since. It's the only time I've ever played golf with him. That game took place, and I did not discuss Anglo-Irish Bank matters with him, and that is the truth. Every decision we made at a time of great crisis in this country was for the purposes of protecting the interests of this country.
He's finished, Brian. You have to move.
I can't jeopardise the finance bill, John.
If the government collapses, you won't have a finance bill.
If I challenge the Taoiseach now, it could provoke a crisis.
The party is in crisis.
But this is bigger than the party. Just let me get this bill through.
Micheál Martin will not support Brian Cowen in the confidence motion, he has said. Brian Lenihan has yet to make his intentions clear.
What did Micheál want?
He thinks I should quit.
Lenihan's people are plotting, holding meetings.
What are you hearing from the backbenchers?
They're with you, boss.
Maybe it is time to go.
And leave it to that posh fucker.
Half the cabinet wants to resign.
You need to put down a confidence motion. Rally the troops. Force out the fucking rebels.
He's holding a confidence motion. This is it.
The time's not right. For the country.
This is politics. You don't get to choose the time.
Joining me now to discuss developments on the economic front is the Minister for Finance, Brian Lenihan. But before we get to that, Minister, we've been told that you're not expected to support Brian Cowen in the confidence motion this afternoon.
At the financial survival of this country. Look, I'm down in the engine room getting muck on my hands. It's very important that I work in that engine room and finish the agenda of the government.
So, sorry, what exactly are you going to do in the vote this afternoon?
But the Taoiseach has been totally supportive of the financial programme that I have brought to the cabinet. He has supported me to the hilt, so I'm supporting the Taoiseach.
But, Minister, did you give people to understand that you would be supportive of a motion of no confidence?
No, I made it very clear to those that approached me that the financial work facing this country made it impossible for me to disrupt the good working relationship that any finance minister should have with the Taoiseach. I didn't have the luxury of indulging my ambitions on this particular matter. As far as I'm concerned, the country comes first.
Thank you, Minister. And now, staying with the issue of the Fianna Fáil leadership, I think we have John McGuinness, the Fianna Fáil TD for Carlow Kilkenny. John McGuinness, Brian Lenihan didn't encourage any heave against the Taoiseach.
That is not what he has been saying to the backbenchers over the last number of months. He did encourage dissent. He did encourage us to look at the numbers, and he did express an interest in the leadership.
That is the end of Lenihan's challenge now. You need to reshuffle.
I can't move Lenihan. The markets would react.
How many of the others are either going or gone?
Martin, Harney,
Ahern Dempsey, O'Keefe, Killeen.
Get rid of them, now.
They're expecting to serve out their term. It wouldn't be fair.
Fuck them! It'll make space for 6 new promotions. That'll put a new face on the cabinet, boost morale on the backbenches. Martin. Who else?
O'Keefe.
O'Keefe. Yeah.
Killeen, Ahern Dempsey. How many is that now?
12.
12 we've wrong.
12 we've wrong.
We've only got 2.
Yep. Barry Andrews.
Barry. Did I disturb you? What time is it?
Just past midnight.
Sorry, Barry. Listen, I want you to be my new Minister for Health.
The junior coalition partner, the Green Party, has today objected to the Taoiseach's attempt to appoint new ministers in the run-up to the election. Ursula, what's happening in Leinster House this morning?
It's quite unprecedented. It's not clear if we even have a legal government at present because half the cabinet has resigned and we don't know who, if anyone, is replacing them.
The Taoiseach is on his way to the House. He will clarify the situation when he gets here.
The Dáil is going fucking mental. You need to get down there.
I don't have a fucking cabinet.
Just come on.
Jesus Christ, God.
Where is the Taoiseach?
We have no Look at this. Would you go to the park?
I'm reassigning the portfolios of those who have resigned as follows. Taoiseach Mary Coughlin becomes the Minister for Education and Health. Pat Carey is the new Minister for Community, Equality, Gaeltacht Affairs and Transport. Mary Hanafin becomes the Minister for Tourism, Sport, Culture and Enterprise. Eamon O'Keefe is the new Minister for Social Welfare and Defence. And Brendan Smith is the new Minister for Agriculture and Justice. The priority of the government I have led has always been to secure the best interests of the nation in these challenging times.
Brian Cowen has announced his resignation as leader of Fianna Fáil. He'll remain as Taoiseach till the general election in March.
We have to get the finance bill through.
Fine Gael have a confidence motion down. We can't win it.
I need to talk to them. Get them to postpone it.
I'll set something up.
Help me with a speech, will you?
What speech?
For the party leadership.
The government could collapse as early as next week, following the decision by Fine Gael to put down a motion of no confidence. In the meantime, in the Fianna Fáil leadership campaign, Micheál Martin is the early favourite. Brian Lenihan is to launch his campaign today.
Minister, there is an elephant in the room here. You are sick. What can you offer the Fianna Fáil party as leader?
I've put everything into the work of solving our country's problems. Problems that began before my entry into the Department of Finance.
Minister.
My tumour has shrunk in size. I am assured by my doctor that I am able and capable of leading the party.
Minister, were you one of the architects of the crash? Minister, will the Fianna Fáil party be heading for destruction?
What is your relationship with
Micheál Martin wins the leadership race. Brian comes third, behind Eamon O'Keefe.
Fine Gael has withdrawn its motion of no confidence in the government, with the Green Party now expected to support the finance bill.
Following the passing of the finance bill, the Dáil has been dissolved and the general election campaign is now officially underway.
The Fine Gael frontbench member Leo Varadkar has said that Fine Gael will not give the banks another cent if voted into power in this election.
Fianna Fáil has suffered its worst ever result in a general election, returning with just 20 seats. Fine Gael and Labour are expected to move quickly to form a government.
Fianna Fáil loses 51 seats. In all of Dublin, only one Fianna Fáil TD is returned, Brian Lenihan. Fine Gael and Labour form a coalition government with the largest majority in the history of the state. Enda Kenny calls the result a democratic revolution. We wait and see what exactly is going to change.
3, 2, 1, action.
Minister, they're waiting for you in the Dáil.
What time is it?
4:20.
Anything more from the ECB?
Not since their refusal this morning.
I'll have to phone them again. Who's got my speech?
I have both versions.
Both?
One with the burning paragraph and one without.
Monsieur Noonan,
Mr.
please.
Trichet, we have to do this.
No, Michael. No. If you force losses on the bondholders, a bomb will go off.
This will not affect the ECB, Jean-Claude.
But the bomb will not go off in Frankfurt. It will go off in Dublin. You have been rebuilding confidence. This will destroy it.
Anglo is a failed bank. The markets are expecting to take losses on it.
Failure to repay the debts of Anglo-Irish Bank will be a default. The rules of the ECB state that we cannot give emergency loans to a bank that defaults.
I have the authority of the Irish government to do this. We have taken a government decision to burn
Anglo-Irish
bondholders.
Bank has 41 billion euro of emergency loans from the ECB at present. If Anglo defaults, your government will become liable for that. Monsieur Noonan.
There were no measures to burn bondholders in the new banking strategy announced today. This was contrary to expectations created by statements by Fine Gael and Labour during the election campaign.
This government's narrative suggests that theirs is a radical new policy, different from the mistakes of our policy. In fact, it is the same policy as ours, and is the correct one.
And Ireland, Mr. Geithner, that came across your desk too?
Oh, fuck yeah. Ireland, in retrospect, was stupid to guarantee all their banks. They couldn't afford it. Their banks were 8 times the size of their economy. Now it's easy for us to say that if they had burned all their bondholders to the banks, then there probably would have been other forms of contagion. But the rest of Europe could afford to guarantee. The Irish couldn't.
Brian?
I'd like to get all this done on paper.
All?
The last few years. The crisis.
I could bring a tape recorder. We could make some recordings. Get them transcribed. A memoir. What do you want to say?
I kept the ship afloat.
Brian Lenihan never did get to record his memoir. He died on June the 10th, 2011. He was 52.